I work in all of Kansas, but primarily over the High Plains Aquifer, which is Groundwater Management Districts 1 through 5. We work integrally with all the conservation districts, which are also embedded in with the NRCS offices all through the state. And so a lot of cost share programs that come out through the High Plains Aquifer that are released through the Division of Conservation, some of those same project funds are released to the Kansas Water Office. So I head up the Water Innovation Systems in Education program, WISE, as well as a couple of other research and feasibility projects. So we work with the conservation districts really when we're trying to roll out cost share programs with producers, feed yards, and dairies. Plus the water office we have a huge education and outreach element. And so a part of WISE, the E in the WISE acronym is education. So we've, for example, just came off of several weeks worth of NRCS irrigation training for new staff. And we also have a lot of the conservation district staff members that go out in order to get kind of onboarded, get familiar with core practices, and understand what their producers may be coming in and needing, and being able to make that translation between the conservation and NRCS world, as well as then the cost share contracting vocabulary. The other part of that is we're working very, very intricately on how to merge green practices with technology practices. So in the modern era of production agriculture, it's not just regenerative ag, soil health, and residue, cover crops, things like that. But it's also how we use technology in irrigation or in precision agriculture management to dovetail in with residue practices, cover crop practices, and living root type of activity. So WISE is, again, it's Water Innovation Systems in Education. The acronym is WISE. So WISE is a pilot program that goes out and works with producers east to west across Kansas. Some of it's water quantity oriented, some of it's water quality oriented. Well, of course, we're always trying to find the conservation practices that remain economically viable, because we want to stay economically viable while we're also being conservation and environmentally minded. We work with producers to have them advocate for their own solutions. We also work with a couple of producers that go find their mentors to their neighbors. And we kind of passively support the producer or the rancher to kind of be just a peer leader. And then they advocate for reform and change in cultural influence. And so we take all those lessons learned about what producers are asking for and what ranchers are asking for and what feedlot and dairy operators are asking for. And we advise policy and planning and cost share then in the state of Kansas. And ultimately, it's public dollars working to help other public dollars. So we take public dollars from the state of Kansas, as well as matching it with the public dollars from the United States, and we give it back to producers. In exchange, we ask producers to maintain or improve the food quality and water quality in the state of Kansas. That's the exchange. That's good citizenship. A lot of our producers are already working with their local conservation districts with one of the programs that are out there, one of the cost share programs that are out there, and they dovetail in with the cost share from the Kansas Water Office, from the Division of Conservation, and some of the federal programs through USDA and NRCS. We work with producers that'll oftentimes have irrigation system where we'll go in and retroactively fix all their regulators and lower their nozzles closer to the ground, so we don't suffer evaporative losses from the water, and kind of making our own microclimate, our own clouds. But in conjunction with that, a producer may be enrolled with the local conservation district with some soil health practices, things that are promoting nutrient holding and water holding capacity in the soil, for example. So as we deliver more and more efficient water, the soil practices that they're implementing through the conservation districts and through the training that they're learning through the conservation districts, it goes hand in glove. We're delivering better water, we're retaining better water. And in the end, it's better for environment. We don't have blowing soil. We're not migrating nutrients into the aquifer, into the water tables. A lot of our rural municipal water systems are suffering, a little bit more contamination, and we're getting a lot better at reducing those loads because of working with these cross-platform, what we call stacked programs. A producer may be working with 3 or 4 different cost share programs, plus they're working in precision agriculture. They may also be in cattle, but they're also trying to practice some regenerative practices. The idea is that they don't have to pick one or the other, they get to pick all of it. Changed the world, salt and light. I spent 22 years in civil engineering trying to do good things and build, society, but not quite seeing the results that I wanted to. And I have agricultural and country roots, and I grew up on a river system, and I saw the direct impacts of rather negligent agricultural practices on that watershed. And since then, since a lot of these practices have been cleaned up and regulation has improved, I've watched my home turf where I grew up. I've watched the wetlands and the riparian areas and the wildlife just kind of bounce back. So I grew up in a mentality that, you know what, a little bit goes a long way. And so I left civil engineering industry and I taught at 2 different colleges in agriculture. And that has brought me full circle now working for the state in somewhat of a civil engineering and implementation management capacity, but still focused on agriculture and feed yards and dairies where I grew up. It's very meaningful work to a lot of people in conservation are coming at it a little bit more from the earthy and the green side of it. I'm coming back into it as a high-tech redneck, or as my uncles would call me, space cowboy. When we first started putting guidance systems on tractors 25 years ago, my cousins kind of heckled me going, oh sure, we're gonna drive our tractors from space. But that's exactly what we do today. We use remote sensing from satellites, we're using Skylink for our mobile internet, we're controlling center pivot technology from telematics from our phones. So we are using all these high-tech. I even got the question earlier today. We're using AI to automate a lot of the systems in agriculture for the lack of, first of all, we don't have the workforce we once did, but there's no need to also put human health or put humans in the way of what a machine can duplicate on our best day. We don't need to drive out and physically burn the fossil fuels to go check things when we can just look at our phone and see if we have an issue. So it's working smarter in its purest sense. It's using machines and technology to work on our behalf. Even AI has a place in conservation in the space that if a producer wants to go out and irrigate but doesn't know if they should or not, even on a 95-degree day, it can read the soil moisture if there's a sensor out there, but it can also look at the weather coming in and predictively analyze, should you put down a ½ inch and then leave room for an inch of rain, or it can take a best guesstimate better than sometimes a producer can. And when you have 30 or 40 pivots, and then you might have another 10,000 acres of rangeland or 5,000 acres of rangeland, it lets our land owners, it lets them utilize their time better as what we're best at, being human. And it also gives us value added to spend time with our families instead of out running around doing mundane work. We had an initiative that came through from some money that was released by the state called the Kansas Water Plan Partnership Initiative. We called it QWPI, KWPPI, and we awarded several $100,000 worth of grant dollars, mostly to conservation districts, to go out and implement best management practices and conservation education, and those went right through the conservation groups. So we're excited about what we get to see them go do. The Kansas Department of Agriculture, Division of Conservation, just headed up and successfully got a $25 million matching grant from the NRCS. The Division of Conservation put up $15 million of in-kind, and the Kansas Water Office put up $10 million of in-kind state dollars, and the feds matched us. So that's a total of $50 million that are going out to producers, particularly in the High Plains Aquifer footprint, in order to incentivize everything from conservation practices and good water management practices. That's all running through the Division of Conservation and some of the conservation offices, and of course we're going to be having education outreach through the conservation offices to help support that. The great thing is we have a great balanced, eclectic group of water authority members. The Water Authority is very, very much knowledgeable what conservation practices probably are making an impact, as well as we have 14 regional advisory committees that advise from all the regions of the state saying, hey, these things are working, these things aren't working. And so the Water Authority has a good data set in which to make decisions from. And they've been advising policymakers, and they've been advising the agencies, and they've been advising the governor's office, and we're seeing a lot of dollars getting cut loose on behalf of not only the public in the state of Kansas, but also producers and ranchers. One of the best things is the community. Sometimes we get out into rural places. I live out in northwest Kansas and don't always have an opportunity to dress up and come look like this. I spend it in my jeans and my hat like everybody else. And we get to come together and share success stories and spur each other on. And it's a time of encouragement and synergy and story and idea swapping. And that is the big part of what KACD does. The other thing is that it brings a sense of community, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and a sense of achievement to people who work in this space or support working in this space. So everything comes down to head and heart. Even though we think we're trying to get conservation practices adopted and we're trying to get technologies and cost shares adopted, what we're really trying to do is change culture and communities one mind and one heart at a time. So that may sound a little touchy-feely, but when you can change a farmer or rancher's mind by the organic relationship you have with them, I think KACD and its members and the conservation districts are really, really critical in gaining the trust of producers and ranchers in Kansas. And that trust is the bridge that opens up all the possibilities for addressing big things like the overall aquifer and water quality issues all across the state, all across the United States.